Hey everyone, how's it going? GamesCon here, and I'm here with a new guide for the new DLC for Chaos Gate Duty Eternal. Oh man, this new update has been a doozy. So much has changed that a lot of my old guides have been made obsolete. But I, GamesCon, shall not be denied! And I shall begin my reconquest of this game with an update to my most popular guide. So here is the new Ship and Resources Guide on Legendary Difficulty for Chaos Gate Duty Eternal. Parts of my old guide are still viable. If you want to check it out, it's available in the exclamation mark thingy in the top right corner. Anyway, this DLC changes a lot about the game. Almost feels like a completely new and much harder game. Changes to the warp surges, higher wound penalties, and changes to numbers, type, and abilities of the enemies makes early to mid-game combat a lot more challenging. But that is not the only thing that is causing a lot of people to struggle. There are many changes to the star map and ship and resources that made my previously recommended build order somewhat obsolete. The first major one being the introduction of Technophage Missions. These missions start popping up very early, even before you have unlocked the Dreadnought. They are extremely challenging on legendary difficulty and will still give you a run for your money even when you have the Dreadnought. I've shown you that they are possible to do without a Dread, but you come out of the fight so beaten up, and with the new wound penalties, tackling them is simply not worth it without the Dread. Avoiding them is your best option early game. But what happens if the reward for the Technophage mission is servitors? In my old guide, I point out how important servitors are early game. In the old guide, I said you must hyper-focus on collecting servitors, but now that won't always be possible, which completely throws off my build order. Not only that, but they shortened the time allotment for the Craftful mission, and you start receiving negative requisition penalties for delaying the mission a lot earlier. As early as under 230 days. Usually I recommend not to do the Craftful mission until day 300, and now even that is no longer possible. They even start spawning mid-game enemy numbers and units a lot earlier. I was so shocked to see squads of triple marines on day 80. So now you need a build order that is a lot leaner and doesn't rely on servitor mission rewards to be efficient. Speed is still king. However, I no longer recommend maxing it out to level 3 before doing the Craftful mission. I myself leave it at level 2, and during the period that I am waiting to save enough servitors to construct either the engine or the warp drive, I usually invest in something that costs a low amount of servitors but takes a long time to build. I do this because I don't want to waste the early construction speed buffs from the Grandmaster reports. Yes, you still always opt for the construction speed options in the Grandmaster reports. The best things to make while you're waiting for servitors are the augmentation chamber and the first level of the barracks. These two are great filler construction options that cost very few servitors and will benefit you in the long run. The augmentation chamber compensates for when you have to abandon the servitor rewarding missions because of the Technophage corruption. The barracks allow you to hold a large enough crew that you can rotate them out when one of your team is in a pretty bad shape. Do not upgrade the barracks all the way. If you are planning to sacrifice knights to overlevel your main squads, do not upgrade them all the way. It will be the only way to get one resilient knights. In the new build order, you have to delay upgrading the meditation chamber quite significantly, so it is better to unlock the high level knight requisition in the armory and directly recruit higher level knights. Before the DLC, I used to recommend leaving the knights at level 1. That's because you can recruit them for just one requisition, unlike in the barracks where they cost 2. And then you could easily kill them off and use them to respec or overlevel your characters. But now, with the changes to respecking, recruiting a level 7 knight and just respecking them is a much more viable option. It is one of my favorite changes to the game and makes building a second squad so much easier. And with all the changes to the game, having at least 2 fully operational teams early on is now mandatory. I now aim for at least 12 knights by the end of the game. Before, I would use just one squad all the way up to day 400 before I even started recruiting the second squad. Now, you need to have 2 squads ready to go before you hit day 100. Once you get your speed and augmentation chamber up to level 2, hyper-focus on getting the Prognosticar array deployed. On Legendary, corruption now spreads like wildfire, and high corruption means a lot more warp surges. Warp surges in the new DLC are absolutely terrifying. Before, I would not even think about warp surges. Now my entire combat strategies and builds revolve around managing warp surges. Not only does having maximum coverage help keep corruption low, but it helps maintain the surge meter during warp surges if you have the warp suppression unlocked. You should have this research tree maxed out by the time your entire Prognosticar web is deployed. However, Gates of Infinity still takes priority over everything else, even with the inertial field warp surge, which blocks teleportation for 5 turns. It is still the best stratagem in the game, period. Quick recap. Here are all the spots for deploying the Prognosticars for optimal coverage. Another thing that's making your life very difficult but is not obvious is the reduced drop rate of Tier 2 equipment at lower armory levels. Hell, I've gotten the mighty Endbringer and Soul Hammer under 80 days in the older version of this game. That will no longer be possible unless you are super lucky. This change is a lot less obvious but makes a huge difference when you consider that you are now facing much higher level enemies much earlier and in much higher numbers. So now it is even more important than before to save all your early game requisition to unlock higher tier weapons and equipment as early as possible. No, I do not believe tier 1 items are worth it on Legendary. Maybe on lower difficulties, but not Legendary. You need that tier 2 bling fast, because mid-game has also become a lot harder, especially with all the crazy side quests that unlock all the new DLC goodies. And finally, the major and best update for the campaign part of the game, the Gladius Frigate. The main reasons to start building a second squad early in the game. The Gladius Frigate is an amazing mid to late game option that makes acquiring resources and managing corruption so much easier. The mission to unlock this is one of the hardest missions you will have to deal with in this game. That is because you have to destroy 5 magnifiers, whatever, to achieve victory. Because of the high corruption level, warp surges rises 45% per turn in this mission, so you're gonna get hit by a lot of brutal warp surges. On top of that, every time you discover a magnifier, it will trigger an automatic warp surge, separate from the main surge. That means you can get hit by 2 warp surges back to back. Fortunately, these warp surges are always the same, depending on the magnifier you are facing. And so here are what each one of the magnifiers do. The bottom right magnifier sets all your resistance to 0, which is the easiest one to deal with. The middle light magnifier summons a bunch of balloon spawns, which can get problematic considering that this one is also defended by a massive horde of cultists. The top one causes all psychic abilities that you use to inflict 3 damage on your knights, which is also very brutal, but it only lasts 3 turns. The middle left one disables heals, and the bottom left inflicts minus 50% crit vulnerability. Man, I can't speak today. The last one is the toughest one to deal with, as you absolutely need crit to cut through the sheer number of enemies defending these things. I destroyed this one last by simply using Gates of Infinity to teleport on top of it and insta-give it, and that way I wouldn't have to deal with the massive horde defending it while my interceptors are suffering minus 50% crit chance. I start with the bottom right one and make a semicircle to the bottom left. Do not take the Glorious Deed unless you are doing it very late in the game, where you are max level and have tier 3 gear, all upgraded up the wazoo. If there is only one lesson I can teach you about this DLC, it is make sure warp surges occur out of combat. That is the mantra of this game right now. Warp surges must occur out of combat. You can't do that if you accept the glorious deed in this mission. You need to play slow, that is, wait till the warp surge meter resets before engaging one of these Millennium. If you get hit with a +5 armor for 5 turns, or immune to stun for 3 turns, or no teleports for 5 turns, then even the Rambo build will not be able to save you. Once you have successfully completed the mission, after a 40-day waiting period, you will unlock the Frigate, which allows you to autoplay one mission per spawning. This is very helpful and speeds your mid to late game quite significantly. You select 4 members, 5 if you're sending a team to a Technophage mission, and then send them off. After a few days, they will automatically report success or failure, and you will earn the mission rewards accordingly. Then you'll wait a couple of days until the ship returns before your knights are available again. However, I have noticed no matter how high a chance of success I have, the mission always seems to result in light wounds at the minimum. So far, I can't seem to run a flawless mission with any of my guys, like I can if I play manually. So far, I don't know if overleveling helps improve those odds or not. Either way, I tend to use the Frigate to tackle missions on the other side of the map, unless they are Technophage missions. I avoid Technophage missions with the Frigate. So far, almost every single one of them has resulted in a critical injury for my knights. It might be because I'm underleveled or undergeared, but it seems like anytime you send them out on a Technophage mission, it will always result in at least one critical injury. If you are going to be using the Frigate, and why not, it's such a great option, then I suggest investing in the Apothecarium. Your knights will get wounded a lot more because of the Frigate, and you want them back up and running as fast as possible. Or have a lot more knights as backups so that you can enjoy rotating teams. Couple of side notes before I wrap it up. On the Mechanicus side missions, make sure Lunette doesn't get injured, otherwise she will suffer an injury debuff on the campaign map, which results in a very long +4 servitor cost penalty. Also, my Rambo build is still the best build to tackle majority of these missions. Just have to remember the mantra, warp surges must occur out of combat. That's it for this video. Next time I will be tackling how the update affected all my previous builds, which ones still work and which one got completely wrecked, how to deal with all the new enemies, and my thoughts on the 2 newcomers to the roster, the mighty Dreadnought and the kinda alright Tech Marine. So until then, peace.